A 2,700-year-old prophecy offers a startlingly relevant lens through which to view the current upheavals in Egypt, a pattern that many observers have perhaps overlooked. In the shifting, restless sands of the Middle East, Isaiah 19 serves as an extraordinary roadmap, a repeating cycle, a chronicle detailing the systemic failure of a great superpower and its subsequent remarkable rebirth. We observe a recurring pattern, a biological and historical rhythm that begins with a sudden internal shock. It is a pattern that has repeated across the eons, appearing whenever the heart of a nation becomes too rigid, too self-reliant, or loses its way. Consider the opening of this ancient text in verse 1.
See, the Lord rides on a swift cloud and is coming to Egypt. The idols of Egypt tremble before him, and the hearts of the Egyptians melt within them.
This swift cloud represents a decree moving faster than any physical army, bypassing even the most formidable military defenses to strike at the very core of internal confidence. One historical analogue appears in 671 BCE with the lightning-fast Assyrian invasion where Memphis fell in a mere 15 days. A later recurrence can be seen in 30 BCE with the arrival of Octavian, and again in 1517 with the Ottoman conquest. A modern echo of this phenomenon occurred in the 2011 social media revolution, a digital force that toppled a regime in just 18 days, causing an untouchable security state to dissolve and melt away almost instantly. As we move to verse 2, the prophecy describes a chilling internal fracture.
I will stir up Egyptian against Egyptian. Brother will fight against brother, neighbor against neighbor, city against city, kingdom against kingdom.
When central authority is paralyzed, internal social friction ignites, and we witness a stage where shared national myths fail, leaving nothing to hold the different tribes and political classes together. During the Assyrian period, Egypt fractured into 12 competing petty kingdoms, the Dodecachi, so focused on internal rivalry they were powerless against invaders. In the Roman era, the rivalry between the Greek-speaking elite in Alexandria and native Egyptians in the countryside created a similar fracture. The 2011 revolution saw a tragic resonance of brother against brother, as families were split between the old regime and various revolutionary factions, turning peaceful neighborhoods into battlegrounds. Pay attention here to verse 3, where the spirit of the nation begins to drain.
The spirit of Egypt will be drained within it, and I will frustrate its counsel. They will consult the idols and the spirits of the dead, the mediums and the spiritists.
As conflict deepens, a nation experiences a collective loss of intellectual agency. In the Roman and Mamluk eras, this led to a surge in superstition and the occult. Today, one might see a parallel in the rise of conspiracy theories and extreme political polarization. When reality becomes too painful to bear, the nation staggers into the irrational, searching for miracles, while their best-laid plans lead only to their own destruction. This chaos leads inevitably to the rise of a strongman in verse 4.
I will hand the Egyptians over to the power of a cruel master, and a fierce king will rule over them, declares the Lord of hosts.
In the natural world, autocracy is often the historical cure for anarchy. When a people cannot rule themselves, they eventually seek a strongman to restore order. Historically, this was Psamtik I, or the fierce Roman governors. The 30-year presidency of Hosni Mubarak offers a striking modern resonance, a regime that imposed a rigid, stagnant stability, acting as a judgment to break national pride. The collapse eventually penetrates the very lifeblood of the land in verse 5.
The waters of the sea will fail, and the river will be parched and dry.
The Nile is the god of Egyptian stability. When it fails, the very concept of Egypt fails with it. One historical recurrence saw low Nile floods frequently topple pharaohs and invite invaders. In modern times, this parching takes the form of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam crisis, a geopolitical threat that strikes at the very heart of the nation's survival. This physical decay continues in verse 6.
The canals will stink, the streams of Egypt will dwindle and dry up, the reeds and rushes will wither.
During the Roman period, any disruption to the river's flow was a catastrophic blow to the imperial breadbasket. This reflects the reality that when a nation's foundational systems fail, even the natural environment begins to reflect that rot, leading to a state where the lifeblood of the country literally begins to stink and wither away. This environmental decay is further explored in verse 7.
The meadows by the Nile, on its banks, and all the sown fields of the Nile will be parched, will blow away, and be no more.
Historically, the blowing away of fields was the nightmare of Roman governors who depended on grain exports. Today, this resonates with the struggle against desertification and the economic staggering caused by rising food costs. When a nation loses its spirit, the natural abundance seems to vanish, for there is no wisdom left to sustain it. Observe the impact on the common worker in verse 8.
The fishermen also will mourn, and all who cast hooks into the Nile will lament, and those who spread nets on the waters will pine away.
This strikes the primary sector first, those who depend directly on the land for survival. When the river fails, the mournful lament of the fishermen becomes a barometer for the depth of the national crisis, signaling that the most basic means of production have been compromised. Notice the impact on industry in verse 9.
Those who work with combed flax and the weavers of white linen will be ashamed.
Linen was once Egypt's most famous export, a symbol of high civilization. Historically, its collapse during upheaval meant the loss of a competitive edge. But today, the legendary weavers of Mahala al-Kubra find themselves confounded by Chinese competition, which has flooded the markets with cheap, mass-produced fabrics, rendering ancient craftsmanship obsolete in the face of global industrial shifts. Verse 10 then describes the foundations being crushed.
The foundations of the land will be crushed, and all the wage earners will be grieved in soul.
This is the summation of economic collapse, where the institutional structures that stabilize a nation are pulverized. Historically, when Roman foundations were crushed by Byzantine and then Islamic conquests, the entire social hierarchy was reset. In the Ottoman period, the foundations were the Mamluk military economic systems that eventually rotted away. A modern echo is the crushing of the middle class through inflation and currency devaluation, leaving the wage earner with a profound sadness of soul that transcends mere poverty. We must look now at the failure of leadership in verse 11.
The officials of Zoan are nothing but fools. The wise counselors of Pharaoh give senseless advice. How can you say to Pharaoh, I am one of the wise, a disciple of the ancient kings?
One historical analogue is found in the final years of the Mubarak administration, an entrenched bureaucracy trapped in its own bubble, leaning on the prestige of past achievements while the foundations were being crushed. They appeared as fools because they believed their long tenure and ancient pedigree were shields against a reality they refused to acknowledge, leading the country straight into the heart of the collapse. This leadership vacuum is challenged in verse 12.
Where are your wise men now? Let them show you and make known what the Lord of hosts has planned against Egypt.
True wisdom is the ability to understand the purpose behind the chaos. In recent history, The wise men of the Mubarak circle had all the data, yet they were completely staggered by the suddenness of public rejection. They appeared to miss the fact that the spirit of the nation was being drained for a higher purpose, ignoring the larger plan in favor of their own narrow survival. This leads us to a most graphic description of delusion in verse 13.
The princes of Zoan have become fools. The princes of Memphis are deceived. The cornerstones of her tribes have led Egypt astray.
The collapse of the elite moves from foresight into active delusion. Historically, during the Assyrian and Roman periods, the elite governors led the people into disastrous alliances. In the modern era, this resonance appeared in the Morsi period, where the ideological cornerstones of the ruling party led the nation toward a fracture rather than a restoration. The state of national confusion is finalized in verse 14.
The Lord has poured into them a spirit of dizziness. They make Egypt stagger in all its work, as a drunkard staggers around in his vomit.
This spirit of dizziness is a divine intervention. When a nation stubbornly ignores the truth, they eventually lose the ability to perceive reality. In the Ottoman era, the state staggered because its leaders were drunk on the glories of the past. This was mirrored in the extraordinary period of information vertigo in 2013, with the elite believing their own ideological propaganda until the system finally slipped through their fingers. The imagery of the drunkard in his vomit shows a nation drowning in its own past failures during this period of post-collapse disaster. In verse 15, we see the point of total impotence.
Neither head nor tail, palm branch or reed, will be able to do anything for Egypt.
As millions took to the streets in 2013, the government simply stopped working. The head was paralyzed by shock, and the vast bureaucracy, the tail, simply melted away, leaving the nation in a state of total impotence where not even the most basic functions of the state could be performed. This leads to a profound psychological shift in verse 16.
In that day, the Egyptians will be like women. They will shudder with fear at the uplifted hand that the Lord of hosts waves over them.
This represents the loss of the capacity for aggression. Historically, during the Assyrian and Roman periods, the Egyptians, once world conquerors, became a subject people, realizing their strength was gone. A similar shuddering was visible when the state security apparatus suddenly lost its will to fight in 2013, a necessary striking that precedes the healing. The catalyst for this change is found in verse 17.
And the land of Judah will bring terror to the Egyptians. Everyone to whom Judah is mentioned will be terrified because of what the Lord of hosts has planned against them.
This is a spiritual and financial terror. Egypt begins to realize that the existence and restoration of Israel is a central component of the regional plan. There is a deep-seated fear that violating the peace treaty with Israel would result in the loss of the international funding and military aid that currently keeps the economy afloat. This financial terror forces an alignment that ancient pride would never have allowed. Listen closely to verse 18.
In that day 5 cities in the land of Egypt will speak the language of Canaan and swear allegiance to the Lord of hosts. One of them will be called the city of Heres.
A critical mass of the population begins to adopt the values and language of Israel. Historically, this manifested during the Roman period as early Christians in Egypt began to learn Hebrew to understand their scriptures. One possible resonance today is found in Egyptian academia. Hebrew is currently offered as a major in the 5 top universities in Egypt: Cairo University, Ain Shams, Mansoura, Alexandria, and Helwan. This formal study of the language of Canaan by the intellectual elite suggests a gradual staggering toward regional alignment. Verse 19 speaks of a sacred presence.
In that day there will be an altar to the Lord in the heart of Egypt, and a pillar to the Lord at its border.
In a modern context, this altar might be seen in the preservation of the peace treaties, which Egypt works tirelessly to maintain against all internal and external pressures. Historically, this was the temple of Onias in Leontopolis, where a Jewish high priest established an altar in the heart of the country. Today, the pillar is visible in Egypt's changing diplomatic stance at the border, a permanent testimony that they recognize regional stability as a divine imperative. This spiritual infrastructure triggers a response in verse 20.
It will be a sign and a witness to the Lord of hosts in the land of Egypt. When they cry out to the Lord because of their oppressors, he will send them a savior and a defender, and he will rescue them.
A possible resonance was seen in 2013, when al-Sisi emerged as a defender to stabilize the state after the nation cried out against ideological and economic chaos. Furthermore, this witness is seen in the peace treaties, which stand as evidence that Egypt has chosen regional life over the idols of perpetual war. Following this, verse 21 describes a nation that commits to a new path.
The Lord will make himself known to the Egyptians, and the Egyptians will know the Lord in that day. They will even worship with sacrifice and offering, and will make a vow to the Lord and perform it.
Historically, this began in the ancient world as Egypt moved toward monotheism. Today, the sacrifice might be viewed as the sacrifice of the national ego, the sacrifice of regional aggression, and the idols of war that defined ancient pride. The effort is the difficult daily work of maintaining peace with neighbors, a choice to relinquish an old identity as a conquering superpower in exchange for a new regional horizon. This leads us to the core mechanism of the prophecy in verse 22.
The Lord will strike Egypt, striking and healing, and they will return to the Lord, and he will respond to them and heal them.
This is the core mechanism of Isaiah's prophecy. It is a fundamental law of Egypt's existence. The nation is built on a cycle of pride followed by a shattering strike, which is the only way to return the land to its spiritual purpose. Whether it was the fall of the pharaohs, the Romans, or the 2011 uprising, each strike was a necessary breakdown required to move the nation toward its role in the future regional corridor. The strike creates the liquid state that allows the healing to take form. Looking toward the prophetic horizon in verse 23.
In that day there will be a highway from Egypt to Assyria. The Assyrians will go to Egypt, and the Egyptians to Assyria. The Egyptians and Assyrians will worship together.
The road that was once for armies to march and destroy is now a path for pilgrims and partners, representing a total integration of civilization. Historically, this highway has several precursors. The Babylonian Via Maris, or Way of the Philistines, connected the Nile to the Euphrates. The Roman paved logistics network integrated the Egyptian granary with Mesopotamia, and the Ottoman Dar al-Hajj, Pilgrim Road, created a link between Cairo and Baghdad. Today, energy pipelines, trade corridors, and digital networks act as the physical vessels for this ancient highway, an Ishmaelite Abrahamic corridor restoring the original path of the patriarch. In verse 24, Israel takes its place.
In that day Israel will be the third with Egypt and Assyria, a blessing in the midst of the earth.
This outlines a regional architecture where three distinct powers function as a single unit. Egypt provides the vitality and raw energy. Assyria provides the organizational framework, and engineering genius, and Israel acts as the central bridge and ethical anchor. Today, we see the beginning of this triple chord in new regional security deals, where Israel's stability serves as the engine that makes the entire regional system function as a blessing. In the grand theatre of history, we witness a most extraordinary prophetic horizon in verse 25.
Blessed be Egypt, my people, Assyria the work of my hands, and Israel my inheritance.
For Egypt, the title, My People, echoes as a fulfillment of the oversight granted after Jacob's blessing, when Joseph's stewardship during the great famine sanctified the soil. As verse 22 reminds us, the Lord will strike Egypt, striking and healing, and they will return to the Lord, and he will respond to them and heal them. This shattering of pride is what allows for the return to true purpose. Further north, in the vast Assyrian regions, we find a survival that defies the odds, the historical fulfillment of the title, Assyria, the work of my hands. Historically, it is crucial to state that while the vast pagan political structure of the Assyrian Empire perished entirely, the only parts of the empire that did not perish were the specific geographic pockets where the Israelites were exiled. This occurred in the lands where the lost tribes, Gad, Manasseh, Naphtali, Reuben, Ephraim, Zebulun, and Issachar, were cast into exile. The spiritual presence of these exiles acted as a preservative, a hidden spark that kept the culture alive while the rest of the empire vanished. We see this in the tomb of Jonah at Nineveh, the only prophet sent to invite the Assyrians back into the fold of the work of my hands. This ancient overlap has left a fascinating Semitic signature on the modern world. The Assyrians remain the unique guardians of a rare Aramaic, a linguistic fossil preserved only by the descendants of the 10 tribes. Their lives are still governed by a similar calendar and the steady, rhythmic pulse of daily prayer. While they may not keep a strict kosher, they have clung tenaciously to ancestral traditions, the avoidance of pork and shellfish, and the careful separation of meat and milk. They practice a communal mourning remarkably like the Jewish Shiva, and celebrate beneath the kupia, so strikingly similar to the Jewish chuppah. Through these shared traits, the physical resources of Egypt, the technological genius of Assyria, and the connecting bridge of Israel are revealed as potential components of one unified organism, a single living system finally beginning its long-awaited journey toward regional healing.